When I came back from my business trip, I had no idea my own homecoming would turn into something I would never forget. The taxi dropped me in front of my son's red brick house in the Boston suburbs. I paid the fare, fixed my blazer, and lifted my suitcase, still tired from the education conference in Chicago, but also proud. After 40 years of teaching English literature, receiving an academic excellence award felt like proof that every late night and every sacrifice had mattered. The house was lit up, warm and familiar. It was Sunday afternoon, and I had told Michael I'd stop by to see the kids. I walked to the door rehearsing how I'd tell Emma and Liam about my award. I knew they were young, but I wanted them to know their grandmother had achieved something important. The door flew open, and Emma launched herself into my arms, her hair in its usual messy braid, wearing the blue dress I'd sent her for Christmas. A moment later, Liam wrapped his arms around my legs, laughing like he always did. For a second, everything felt perfect. Michael came down the hall, gave me a brief hug, and asked about the conference. Before I could answer, Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. Her smile was polite but distant, the same as always. She invited me to stay for dinner in a tone that sounded more like an obligation than a welcome. I agreed anyway. I wasn't there for her. I was there for my grandchildren. There had always been tension between Rebecca and me. For years I tried to excuse it, telling myself she might feel insecure or protective. But deep down I knew it was more than that. I represented something she disliked, a woman who built a career, who didn't disappear after marriage, who proved life didn't end at a certain age. Still, I never argued. I just showed up for the children. Michael carried my suitcase to the guest room and mentioned I looked tired. I noticed he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Something felt off, heavier than usual, but before I could ask, Liam grabbed my hand and begged me to see his latest school project. As he pulled me toward the living room, my eyes landed on a large brown photo album on the coffee table. The title on the cover read, "Our Family," in shiny gold letters. I picked it up out of curiosity. Emma proudly explained that her mom had made it to preserve their memories. I smiled and opened the first page: wedding photos, baby pictures, birthdays, vacations. Then my smile faded. Something was wrong. In photo after photo, where I knew I should have been standing, there was empty space. Some images were clearly edited, others had rough edges, as though someone had been cut out by hand. I flipped through faster, my chest tight. A birthday I remembered clearly, a holiday where I'd brought presents and cooked all morning. Event after event, my presence erased every time. And on the final page, written in elegant black letters, was a sentence that stopped my heart cold. "The worst grandmother in the world doesn't belong in our memories." I looked up and saw Rebecca standing in the doorway, watching my face like she'd been waiting for this moment. Our eyes locked. Hers were steady. Mine burned. She calmly told the children to go wash their hands for dinner. When their footsteps faded, the room fell silent. I set the album down carefully, as if it might shatter. "Why?" was all I could manage. She folded her arms and told me not to pretend to be hurt. A real grandmother, she said, would choose family over work. She didn't want her kids thinking my life was an example to follow. My hands shook as I opened my mouth to respond, but Michael walked in. The color drained from his face when he saw the album. He started to speak, quickly, nervously. I asked him if he had known. The pause was answer enough. Before he could say more, Rebecca cut in and claimed it was her doing alone. She said it without hesitation, without regret. And in that moment, I realized the envelope I'd brought, the one I'd planned to give them with pride, was about to change everything. He said he agreed that kids need good influences in their lives, role models who put family first. I looked at my son, the child I had raised by myself after his father walked away, the boy I worked 2 jobs for just to pay for his education, and now he was a man who stood by while his own mother was quietly removed from his family's story. "Michael," I whispered. He stared at the floor and finally said, "It's complicated, Mom." In that moment, something inside me cracked, but something stronger took its place. I looked at the album, then at Rebecca, then back at my son, and I made a choice. This wasn't going to end like this. "All right," I said calmly. "If you want me gone, let's see whether you can erase everything I truly am." I picked up my bag and went upstairs to see my grandchildren before dinner. While I hugged Emma and listened to Liam explain his project, my thoughts were racing. That album wasn't just an insult, it was proof of something that had been happening for years. Rebecca had been pushing me out quietly, piece by piece, but if there was one thing I knew how to do, it was research, organize, and present the truth. I had just been honored for it after all. At dinner, I smiled peacefully while planning something that would change the entire balance of that house. Later that night, after a stiff, uncomfortable meal, where Rebecca filled the room with her voice and Michael barely looked at me, I lay awake under the slow hum of the ceiling fan. My thoughts drifted back to when it had just been my son and me against the world. I was 32 when Michael's father left. Michael was 7, quiet, thoughtful, with his father's eyes and my streak of stubborn resolve. I still remember finding the note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore." Nothing else. The rent was due in 2 weeks. I was finishing my doctorate while working part-time, and suddenly I was a single mother with a scared child and real bills closing in. That night, I told Michael his father had gone away for work and tucked him into bed, swallowing my tears so he wouldn't hear them. The next morning, I called my department and accepted a full-time position. I also asked for evening classes, anything that kept us afloat. For years, life became a blur of classrooms, late-night grading, and rushing from campus to after-school programs. I often sat in the back row at Michael's school events, arriving just as the curtain opened because I couldn't leave work any earlier. One winter evening when Michael was 12, I found him alone at the table, frustrated with his homework. I suggested asking friends for help. "What friends?" he answered quietly. That night, I cried where he couldn't hear me. I realized that while I was working to give him stability, he was growing up alone. The very next day, I turned down a prestigious opportunity at work and rearranged my schedule. I started hosting small study groups at our apartment. I baked cookies even when money was tight, and slowly, Michael began to open up to the world again. When he got into Boston University with a partial scholarship, I covered the rest from savings built dollar by careful dollar over 10 years. He told me I didn't have to do it. "Yes, I do," I said as I wrote the check. "This matters." Lying in that guest room years later, I thought about how strange it was to be called selfish after a lifetime of choosing my son over everything else. Every career choice I'd made had aimed at giving him a future. And when he met Rebecca in his final year of college, I truly was happy for him. She was confident and ambitious. I even remembered our first meeting, hearing her polite interest as Michael spoke about my work, until the conversation drifted away from it just as quickly. After that, the calls grew fewer. Conversations felt careful, rehearsed, and once they were married, there was always a reason not to visit. Slowly, quietly, a distance formed I hadn't built, but one I was now determined to face. There was always a reason. The house was being remodeled, the kids had caught something, the timing just wasn't right. Still, I kept trying. I sent presents. I called on birthdays. I checked in when Michael was struggling at work. When Emma was born, I even took time away from my job to help with the newborn. At first, Rebecca thanked me, but it didn't last. Whenever I offered a suggestion, she'd smile tightly and say she preferred to do things her own way. I stepped back, afraid of crossing a line. But once distance appears, it grows fast and quietly. One memory burned sharper than the rest. Emma's 4th birthday. Michael told me she loved dinosaurs, so I spent weeks finding the perfect book-bright colors, moving pictures, simple facts. When Emma opened it, her face glowed. "Look, Mommy, dinosaurs!" she shouted. Rebecca smiled, unreadable. "How educational," she said. "Maybe when you're older." The book vanished. Months later, when I asked Emma about it, she looked confused. "What dinosaur book, Grandma?" That was when I understood the pattern. As morning light filled the guest room, I sat up straight. That photo album downstairs wasn't a one-time cruelty. It was proof of something that had been happening for years. I wasn't just being edited out of pictures, I was being erased from my grandchildren's lives. I picked up my phone and called someone I trusted more than anyone. "Janet, it's Eleanor. I need your help. It's about the kids." Janet had spent her career investigating cases at the district attorney's office. If anyone knew how to uncover the truth, it was her. I dressed slowly that morning, choosing calm over emotion. The house was quiet. Michael had already left. Rebecca was upstairs getting the children ready. I poured my coffee and noticed a small envelope on the counter. It had a childish drawing on the front and was addressed to Grandma Eleanor. But it was already open. Inside was a handmade card, decorated with dinosaurs. "I miss you, Grandma. When are you coming again?" My chest tightened. "Oh, that arrived yesterday," Rebecca said casually from the doorway. "I forgot to mention it." I glanced at the postmark. 3 weeks old. Before I could speak, the kids came running in, bags on their backs. "Grandma, you're still here?" Liam laughed. "I am," I said gently. "And I'd love to walk you to school today if that's okay." Rebecca stiffened. "We're late, and the school approves visitors in advance." "I called this morning," I replied calmly. "Michael added me to the list years ago." Her mouth tightened, but she said nothing. The drive was silent. The children chatted happily, unaware of the storm between the adults in the car. At the school gates, I hugged them tightly. "I'll see you soon," I promised, and meant it. Instead of leaving, I went straight to the front office and asked to speak with their teachers. Emma's teacher greeted me warmly. "She talks about you all the time," she said. "She brought a book about famous women to show and tell last month, told the class her grandmother gave it to her, and that you teach people about literature." I felt tears rise. I had sent that book months ago, never knowing if she had even received it. Then the teacher hesitated. "Mrs. Bennett told Emma you're too busy to visit," she added quietly. "That isn't true," I whispered. "I've been trying." Liam's teacher shared the same story. According to the children, I canceled visits often. According to reality, I had never been invited. I left that school heartbroken, but clearer than ever. My next stop was a small cafe near Michael's office. Janet was already there, glasses on, papers spread in front of her. She looked at me once and shook her head. "You look worn out," she said. I sighed into the seat across from her. "That obvious?" She slid a folder across the table. "I made some calls this morning," she said, "and your daughter-in-law has been very busy." Inside the folder were printed screenshots from Rebecca's social media pages. Her accounts were private, but friends of friends had been willing to help. In post after post, I was described as the distant grandmother too absorbed in my career to care about family. There were complaints about how the kids were heartbroken again because Grandma had supposedly canceled plans I had never even been told about. "There's more," Janet said softly. She had spoken to my neighbor, Mrs. Winters, the woman who looks after my place when I'm away. She told Janet that packages I'd sent to the children had been quietly delivered back to my doorstep while I was traveling for work. She had kept them safe for me. Everything suddenly made sense. The gifts the children never mentioned. The cold, polite thank you calls at Christmas. They hadn't received anything at all. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would she do this?" Janet reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Some people need total control," she said. "They don't want to share love. They need to be the center of attention, even if that means cutting others out." Images flashed through my mind. Emma proudly showing her class the book I had sent, the card sitting opened on the counter, every moment that could have been different. The hurt was sharp, but it came with clarity. "I'm getting my grandchildren back," I said quietly. On the way home, I made 2 calls. First, to my lawyer. I asked for copies of every financial contribution I had made over the years, the house down payment, the loan when Michael lost his job, the college funds I'd been building for the children. Then I called my son. "Mom, is everything okay?" "You left without saying goodbye." "I thought it was better that way," I said gently. "Michael, we need to talk," In person, dinner, just you and me, Friday. He hesitated. Rebecca won't like it. This isn't about Rebecca, I replied. It's about you, me, and the truth. After a pause, he agreed. When I parked outside my building, Mrs. Winters was watering her plants on the balcony. She waved down at me. I kept those packages for you, she called. Shall I bring them down? An hour later, I sat on my living room floor surrounded by unopened gifts books, games, souvenirs from my travels. Everyone had been chosen with my grandchildren in mind. Everyone had been intercepted. I picked up a small music box I'd bought Emma for her last birthday. It played Beethoven and held a note about my father, who used to play that piece on the piano when I was a little girl. The lid was slightly bent, as if it had been forced open and shut again. Someone had looked inside before sending it back. That night, I began preparing the envelope. It had to be undeniable, honest, clear. It had to tear down the wall that had been built between me and my grandchildren. For 2 weeks, I gathered proof. Each new detail hurt. Each one confirmed what I had feared all along. Friday evening almost didn't happen. Michael tried to cancel twice. Only when I mentioned I might sell the house he grew up in did he finally agree to meet. We sat across from each other at the same Italian restaurant where we'd once celebrated his school successes. He looked worn out, darker circles under his eyes than I remembered. You're not really selling the house, are you? He asked. That depends on this conversation, I answered calmly. Michael, why have you let Rebecca push me out of your children's lives? He looked down. You're overthinking it. She just wants stability for them. Is that why she tells them I cancel plans I was never invited to? I asked. Or why my gifts are returned without their knowledge? His head snapped up. What are you talking about? I slid the folder across the table. Either she's been lying to you, I said quietly, or you've been pretending not to see it, but your children are being kept from their grandmother. He opened the folder hesitantly. Inside were photos of returned packages, screenshots of posts, and written statements from teachers about the things Emma and Liam had said in class. This could mean something else, he muttered, but his voice wasn't steady. There's more, I said, placing financial records beside them. The house, the loans, the savings for your children. I never brought this up because I never wanted you to feel indebted. But when I'm being portrayed as someone who doesn't care about her family, the truth matters. His face collapsed. Mom, Why, Michael? I asked softly. Why did you let this happen? He ran a tired hand through his hair, just like he used to as a boy. Rebecca didn't grow up with much, he began. Michael told me about Rebecca's childhood. Her mother had been cold and demanding. After the divorce, her father remarried, and his new wife had no interest in raising someone else's child. Rebecca was passed between relatives who treated her like an inconvenience instead of family. So she's taking it out on me? I asked softly. Michael shook his head. It's not that simple. She's afraid your life proves people can walk away emotionally. She thinks your work means you might one day disappear from the kids the way her parents disappeared from her. I leaned closer to him. Look at me. Have I ever given you a reason to believe I would abandon Emma and Liam? He couldn't meet my eyes. No, but Rebecca is certain your job will always come first. When I missed Liam's kindergarten play, I was in the hospital, I said quietly. I had pneumonia. I sent a message for him that was never shown to him. Michael's face fell. I didn't know. There's a lot you don't know, I replied gently, because you haven't wanted to see it. The waiter brought our food, but neither of us touched a bite. What do you want from me? Michael asked at last. I want you to face what's happening, I said. I want you to stop excusing it, and I want a real relationship with my grandchildren without anyone standing in the way. He shook his head slowly. She'll never allow that. Then I will handle it myself, I said. His eyes widened. What does that mean? Do you remember the neighbor's dog that bit you when you were 10? I asked. You begged me not to report it because you were afraid something bad would happen to the dog. I listened, and later that dog hurt another child much worse. I've regretted staying quiet ever since. I picked up my purse. I won't make that mistake again. What's happening to Emma and Liam ends now. As I stood, Michael grabbed my wrist. Please, let me try to talk to her first. You've had 11 years, I said calmly. Talking time is over. The next week was spent organizing every detail. Janet helped me arrange everything in the clearest way possible. Once you do this, there's no turning back, she warned. I know, I said, sealing the large envelope. This isn't about me anymore. It's about the children. That evening, Michael texted to say Rebecca had agreed to family counseling. It was far too late. The next morning, I called Rebecca myself. Eleanor? She said, surprised. I'm coming to Liam's science fair tomorrow, I told her. A pause. We didn't know you wanted to go. I always want to be there for my grandchildren, I replied. I'll see you at 4. I hung up before another excuse could appear. That night, I placed the envelope into my briefcase. Alongside it, I added a small gift wrapped in silver paper. Decades of teaching had taught me the power of timing. Tomorrow, everything would change. I also knew from Emma's public page, carefully controlled by Rebecca, that there would be a family dinner afterward to celebrate the project and Rebecca's parents' anniversary. The right moment, the right audience. That night, I thought about all the memories I had missed and all the ones that could still be saved. This wasn't just about me being present. It was about the children knowing the truth and being free to form their own bonds. The envelope was ready. The school gym buzzed with energy the next day. Tables overflowed with colorful projects. Parents snapped photos. Children proudly stood behind their displays. I arrived early and scanned the room until I saw Liam near the back, nervously fixing a cardboard volcano. Rebecca stood beside him, polished and poised, as if she were attending a meeting instead of a school event. Michael wasn't there. I took a deep breath and walked toward them. "Grandma!" Liam cried as he saw me. He wrapped his arms around my waist. "I wouldn't miss this for anything," I told him, holding him close. Rebecca forced a smile. "Eleanor, I didn't expect you." "I told you I was coming," I said calmly. Then I turned back to Liam. "Now tell me everything about this volcano." For 15 minutes, he explained every part, how he built it, how it would erupt, what each detail represented. His excitement was contagious. When he finished, I smiled. "You did an amazing job." "I'm so proud of you," I told him as he finished explaining. "Thanks, Grandma," he grinned. "Dad helped me paint it, but I did all the science on my own." Before I could reply, Rebecca cut in. "Your dad texted. He's running late, but he'll be here soon." Liam's smile faded a little. He promised he wouldn't miss it. "Work runs long sometimes," she said smoothly. "You know how important your father's job is." The irony didn't escape me. The same excuse she had used against me for years suddenly sounded perfectly reasonable when it came to Michael. "Well, I'm here," I said softly, resting a hand on Liam's shoulder. "And I brought something for you." I opened my briefcase and handed him a small silver package. Rebecca stiffened instantly. "We don't give gifts at school events." "It's for his project," I answered evenly. By then, Liam had already unwrapped it. Inside was a large, colorful book, Volcanoes of the World. "Whoa," he whispered, flipping through page after page of roaring eruptions and glowing lava. "I thought it might help with your future projects," I said. "There's a message inside." He opened the front cover and read my words quietly. "To my brilliant grandson, whose curiosity will take him far. With love, Grandma." His fingers traced the ink. "Thank you," he said softly. Rebecca reached for the book. "I'll put that away so it doesn't get ruined." "I think he'll want it with him," I said gently. "The judges might like seeing what sparked his interest." Before she could object, the principal announced judging would begin in 5 minutes. Liam rushed back to his table, book pressed proudly to his chest. Rebecca leaned close to me. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "I'm being a grandmother," I replied. Michael arrived just as the judges reached Liam's table. I watched from across the room as my grandson explained his project with excitement, pointing to real photographs from the book to show what volcanoes looked like in the world outside his model. I saw pride on Michael's face. And then confusion when he noticed the book. Liam didn't win first place, but he earned special recognition. His smile was brighter than any trophy. As the families began to leave, Rebecca announced the dinner gathering that evening. "You can join us if you like," she said to me, sounding more obligated than sincere. I thanked her, knowing the invitation existed only because we weren't alone. I followed them home in my own car, the envelope resting quietly on the seat beside me. This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. It was long overdue. Rebecca's parents were already there when we arrived. They were polite, warm enough. Emma ran to me the moment she saw me. "Did you see Liam's volcano?" "I did," I smiled. "And it was amazing." Dinner was tense beneath the smiles. Rebecca filled the room with talk about family values, being present, and tradition. Michael barely spoke. Then Rebecca's father rose, lifting his glass. "To family." We all echoed the words. Dessert was served. Rebecca passed out gifts to her parents. The moment had come. "If I may," I said calmly, "I have something I'd like to share." All eyes turned to me. I placed the envelope on the table. "This is for Rebecca." She stared at it. "What is that?" "Open it," I said. With visible hesitation, she untied the string. Inside were organized folders, labeled clearly, photographs of returned packages, screenshots of messages never delivered, receipts, bank records, statements from teachers. Color drained from her face. Her father leaned closer. "What exactly is this?" "Proof," I said quietly. "Proof that I've been kept away from my grandchildren on purpose." Michael reached for one of the folders. His expression shifted with each page. "Mom, I don't understand." "For years," I said, "my gifts were blocked, my messages intercepted, and my visits canceled without my knowledge. I was made to look like someone who didn't care." Rebecca pushed the envelope away. "This is absurd. You're trying to start a scene." "No," I said gently. "I'm simply telling the truth." I turned to Emma and Liam. "Did either of you ever get the birthday gifts I sent last year? Or the books?" Their faces fell into confusion. "You sent gifts?" Emma asked. "Yes," I said softly. "For years." Rebecca suddenly stood up. "Kids, go to your rooms. This is for adults," Rebecca snapped. "No," I said clearly. "They deserve to hear the truth. They've been misled about me for years." The air in the dining room felt heavy and electric. Rebecca's parents looked at each other, uneasy. Michael stood frozen, staring at the papers spread across the table like his entire world had shifted overnight. "How dare you come into my home and accuse me like this in front of my children and my parents?" Rebecca said sharply. I met her stare without blinking. "How dare you take my grandchildren away from me and then brand me as the worst grandmother in the world?" Marilyn inhaled sharply. Emma's eyes widened in realization. "Is this about that album?" she asked. "The one that doesn't have you in it?" Rebecca let out a nervous laugh. "That old thing? It's meaningless." "No," I said quietly. "What's meaningless are lies, and tonight they end." Silence followed, thick and unbearable, until Emma pushed back her chair and stood, walking toward the table to study the photos of returned gifts with her own eyes. Liam moved closer to his father, looking lost. Rebecca gripped her chair so tightly her knuckles turned white. "This is ridiculous," she insisted, though her voice shook. "You're twisting everything to make me look awful." "The proof speaks for itself," I replied evenly. Michael picked up a copy of the check for their house. "I didn't know," he murmured. "Not all of it. Not like this." Rebecca's father cleared his throat. "Rebecca, explain this." "It's nothing," she shot back. "She's angry because she doesn't fit into our family the way she wants to." "Is that why you told me Grandma canceled our museum trip?" Emma suddenly asked. "She didn't really cancel, did she?" Rebecca's face flushed. "You don't understand," I understand you lied, Emma said, her voice breaking. I cried all day because I thought Grandma didn't want to see me. My heart caught in my chest. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back and returned to her seat silently, staring at the table. Michael stood and gathered the papers. We need to talk about this now. There's nothing to talk about, Rebecca snapped. She breezes in once a year and acts like she knows our family. They're my children too, Michael said firmly. Marilyn approached Rebecca gently. Maybe we should leave. This needs to be settled as a family. You are my family, Rebecca insisted. She isn't. Yes, she is, Michael said, surprising everyone. My mother is family. She always has been. Rebecca's hands began to tremble. So you're choosing her now? After everything I've done? This isn't about choosing anyone, Michael replied. It's about what's true. Did you hide my mother's gifts? Did you lie about her visits? Rebecca said nothing. Liam tugged at his father's sleeve. Dad, is that new book going to disappear like the dinosaur book? Michael looked down at him, stunned. What dinosaur book? The one Grandma gave me. I read it once, then it was gone. Rebecca spoke quickly. It wasn't right for him. It was too advanced. That wasn't your call, Michael said, and lying about it was wrong. Donald stepped forward, his voice heavy with disappointment. This isn't what we taught you. Rebecca broke down. Of course everyone blames me. None of you know what it's like to feel replaced by a woman who shows up with presents and then vanishes. I softened my voice. I never wanted to replace you. I only wanted to be part of their lives. You missed everything, she cried. Plays, illnesses, broken bones, because your job came first. Because I was never told, I said calmly, or because I was given the wrong information. The truth is right in front of you. Michael stepped between us. This ends today. He turned to his in-laws with regret in his eyes. I'm sorry, but tonight's celebration needs to stop. They nodded, quietly collecting their things. Donald paused beside Rebecca. We'll talk tomorrow, he said, clearly shaken. When they left, Michael turned to the children gently. Emma, Liam, please go upstairs for a little while. Your mother, your grandmother and I need to talk, Michael told them softly. When the children were finally gone, he collapsed into a chair, pressing his hands to his face. I don't even know where to start. You could start, I said quietly, by asking why I was erased from every photo in that album. Rebecca folded her arms. It was private. And yet it sat in plain sight, I replied. Michael looked up at her, exhausted. Why, Rebecca? Why did you go this far? For a moment, she said nothing. Then something inside her finally broke. She doesn't deserve them, she cried. She spent years working, and now she gets to play the perfect grandmother. My own mother was never there for me. My stepmother didn't want me. And now she comes in with her awards and world stories and makes me feel small, like my life doesn't matter. I heard the pain beneath her anger. For the first time, I wasn't just listening, I was understanding. Being a mother matters more than anything, I said gently. I worked because I loved my son, not instead of loving him, and I never wanted to replace you. I only wanted to love Emma and Liam in my own way. She looked away, wiping her eyes. Michael took her hand. This can't go on. The lies, the control. It's hurting all of us. Her voice wavered. So what now? She gets everything she wants, and I'm the villain? What I want, I said firmly, is honesty and a relationship with my grandchildren that's real, nothing more. Michael stood. We need help, real help. Not to fix one person, but to heal the family. Rebecca let out a short, bitter laugh, then fell silent. I slid the papers back into their folder. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I came because truth matters. And now we decide what comes next. Footsteps echoed on the stairs. Emma and Liam hovered in the doorway. Is Grandma leaving? Emma asked. Everyone looked at Rebecca. She took a breath, then spoke quietly. No, Grandma's staying. We still have dessert and something worth celebrating. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door opening. 6 months later, I sat in my garden while Emma and Liam chased butterflies through the roses. For the first time, they were spending a full weekend with me alone. Counseling had been hard, honest, necessary. Rebecca and I weren't close, but we were no longer enemies. Michael had finally learned to speak up. And the children no longer stood between anyone. Lost gifts returned. Letters arrived. Visits happened. Even the photo album had changed. My face was no longer missing. Instead, there was a new section: photos of my life, my work, and quiet moments with the children woven together. Nothing was perfect, but it was real, and as I watched my grandchildren laugh in the gold light of evening, peace finally found me. The album that once broke my heart now lived on my shelf, not as a wound, but as proof that truth can rebuild what was taken. The envelope rested in my desk, untouched, where I hoped it would remain forever. Some might call it forgiveness. I call it restoration.